I got them at 11-6, but I
Okay.
can see 10-7. 10-7, 11-6 was my neighborhood. The guy I was doing it with had them at 13 wins. I thought that seemed a little optimistic, but I think they're a 10-win team for sure, and 11 is likely.
10-win team for sure. I'm waffling between 8 and 9 wins. I'm very down on this team. We've talked about it for the last couple of months, but the schedule seems tough, and I guess they could beat the Saints, and they could beat Washington, and they could beat a bunch of the teams they're supposed to beat, but I don't know. I guess if like Talanoa Hufanga is really good, and Trey Lance is really good, and Aaron Banks is really good, and Javon Kinlaw is really good, then this team's going to reach expectations, but I'm a little nervous about some of these young guys that have nothing proven, that are just.
Yeah, I hear you. But to me, the big questions are the O-line. So you got Williams at left tackle, and then what? So to me, the left guard, the center, the right guard, the right tackle, the whole offensive line outside of Trent Williams is a big question. And then what exactly are you going to get out of the quarterback spot? Is Shanahan going to use the quarterback in a way that's going to put him in harm's way? We're going to see a lot of Sudfeld and Purdy. Is that going to happen? Obviously that would derail things. My whole 10-7, 11-6. I guess, basically was that would Trey Lance would be in there and that he's going to be healthy. But that's a big question for me. Is he going to be in there, or is he going to be hurt? And how good is that offensive line outside of Trent?
Well, I think the way the Niners sell this, the reason to be optimistic, I think 10 or 11 wins, is look, they replaced Dee Ford. Dee Ford was a total loss last year. Now you got Drake Jackson. You replaced Jason Verrett with Trevarius Ward, and Jason Verrett's still around. Maybe if Jason Verrett gets healthy, he could be a contributor down the stretch. So from that, and plus they improved their special teams. So from the Niners' perspective, they improved all their weaknesses. They filled all their holes, but I feel like they created new ones. They clearly don't value the guard spot or the safety spot at all. Their attitude of strong safety is we'll play someone. It'll be a 5th round pick, or this 28-year-old vet who's never really been a starter, or Tavarius Moore. Who cares? Is basically their attitude, which is strange to me. That guy plays 100% of the snaps for you.
Yeah, it is an interesting approach they've taken to building the roster. I think they like Talanoa Hufanga. That's my guess. It plays that way. Yeah. And I like him a lot as well. And I think he'll get better from last year to this year. So maybe if that is indeed the case, then maybe it's Ward and Hufanga at safeties, and maybe all this hand wringing about not getting a safety in the 2nd or 3rd round. Maybe that they're looking at only backup safeties, and maybe they think of Ward and Hufanga as the clear starters. That's my guess. The O-line is even more perplexing because we don't know what Banks is. We don't know what Moore is. We don't know what McKivitz is. They got to the NFC title game with Brunskill and Mack at the end of the line, and Tom Compton on the right side. So how good is that right side going to be? That's a big question.
Another thing that we don't really talk about anymore, but it's something you got to consider with the 49ers injuries. Even last year when they were relatively okay with injuries, they had a lot of them. It's a factor for them all the time. And I think one more thing, are they going to have a slow start like they had last year? The Niners are sort of figuring out who they're going to start at like 4 or 5 different positions. They have some very young guys getting in there. It seems like Trey Lance, Drake Jackson, those guys could be better the second half of the season than the first. And it seems like also D'Amico Ryans could be searching for, his best 4-man pass rush on 3rd down. It might take him a few months to figure it out like it took him last year.
It's funny. I think they kind of got into that mode because they had so many injuries a couple years ago, and it's like, we don't want to do anything. We don't want to hurt anybody. But I kind of like that approach. I like the McVay approach, which is sit everybody and roll the dice in week 1. Don't worry about, we got to be at tip-top, efficiency week 1, both sides of the ball. Sit your guys as much as you can in the preseason. The guys that matter should sit and sacrifice a game at the beginning of the year if need be, to make sure you get to week 1 with the roster that you intended to have.
Right. You might feel like you're not quite as prepared as you should be, but at least you haven't beaten yourself in the offseason, which the Niners used to do routinely. I made a full list of players that have gotten hurt in practice with the Niners. It was just outrageous. And the one guy I think the Niners should feel regretful about is D Ford. That guy got hurt in practice a lot. Everyone knew he's not a practice player, and the Niners invested big money to insist that he practice so they could have a culture. I mean, that was pretty bad. Anyway.
The one thing, though, Grant, too, that I think should not be lost is that when the Niners won all those 5 Super Bowls and they had those 20-year, 16 years, 10-plus wins or whatever it was, they oftentimes laid an egg early in the season at home. And a lot of times it was because they didn't go hard early in camp. And they got to the playoffs almost every one of those years with almost their full complement of stars, totally healthy. So maybe something should be gleaned from that.
In 94, I was 6, but in 94 when they won the Super Bowl, wasn't there a game early in the season when they lost big to Philly and scored like 8 points?
I was there, 40-8, the Charlie Garner show.
I remember being 6 and just catching the score on TV and thinking, like, the Niners don't lose like that. Everything I thought I knew about the world was shattered in that moment. The Niners 8, and I remember Steve Young yelling at George Seifert. You could see it. He was yelling at him, and Seifert wouldn't turn and look at him. It was like, well, you're dead to me today.
But they got to the playoffs in all those years, and Jerry was there, and Joe was there, and Steve was there, and Brent Jones was there. They didn't lose these guys because they probably they didn't lose them in camp for the most part. They lost. I think that 94 year they might have lost Richard Dent and like early in the year to an injury, but other than that, they were almost fully healthy.
I think training camp practices are more dangerous than ever because I didn't cover it back in the day, but from what I understand, back in the day there was those grueling 2-a-days. Now it's like, get all your reps in 90 minutes. It's like, hey, there's a lot of non-contact injuries that happen in those explosive settings, as opposed to, I would imagine if you're practicing for like 6 hours a day, there's a lot of resting. I would imagine.
Well, it's hard to say. You saw the Tariq Cohen blow out his Achilles on TV. That was rough. Yeah. So anytime you're a football player and you're going full bore, there's a chance for catastrophic injuries, whether they're caused by a player and an impact, or sometimes it's just, you run the pattern, you plant your leg and boom, gives out on you.
Yeah. Nick says Hufanga was in on the most important play in Green Bay and was stride for stride with Adams on the PBU. Seems like they trust him. He was taking time from Tart. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
He was their gold helmet guy, so they loved him in the draft.
They did. My question is, he feels like the kind of guy who's going to give up some big plays because he's instinctual and not super fast. So he's going to be like trying to jump certain routes. At the same time, maybe he is a playmaker, unlike Tart, and it evens out. Or it's
what I'm banking on, Grant. We'll see this summer, but what I'm banking on is that you put Hufanga in an NFL, conditioning off season and give him a whole nother year in the defense where he's got, he's that much more confident of what he's seeing pre-snap. And I think you're going to see a player that might be a half step quicker. And if he's a half step quicker, he might be an all-pro player. So, this guy's an incredible talent. And I thought the fact that he stood up in that big play against Green Bay down the field shows that, he improved as the season went on, and I expect him to continue to improve. So if that's the case, he might be a quicker athlete than we saw a year ago. And if that's the case, he might be a better coverage player.
Well, he's never going to be in man-to-man coverage. The Niners will avoid it because they have Jimmy Ward for that. So he's going to be in different zones. And I remember interviewing Eric Davis about a year ago on my channel, and he kept saying, like, look, Richard Sherman is not too slow to be a safety. Merton Hanks wasn't particularly fast, but the reason he intercepted so many passes as a free safety is because he had great instincts. And if that can be Talanoa Hufanga, who's just in the right place in the right time in zone coverage, great. Wonderful.
I love his timing. And I thought one of the most effective things that I saw from the Niner defense, and I know you saw this late in the year because we talked about it, was how coordinated everything was. They would play fast up front. They're putting heat on the quarterback, and then they're playing fast behind it. And how many times did Hufanga show up as the ball is showing up? I thought his timing in down the stretch was phenomenal. Sometimes guys, especially as rookies, chase those plays from a step behind the entire entire year. His timing to close as the ball was arriving was impeccable. So I expect him to be really good this year.
That's a good point. The other side of that, though, is if you get a quarterback and a team that can extend plays,
right?
Boom, everything's man-to-man. Hufanga is getting targeted. I'm curious to see how teams are going to want to go at him. He's unproven, and really everyone else in the Niners secondary is good. I don't know who their nickelback's going to be. If it's Mosley, then Ambry out, you go at Hufanga. So he's going to be targeted. He can prove himself.
He's going to be thrown into the fire, man. We're going to see, they're going to test him for sure.
Well, Troy Polamalu sold. John Lynch is sold. That's 2 Hall of Fame safeties. I'm curious to see.
He played fast. He played fast at the end of the year. Even though he didn't run fast for the stopwatch.
No, he didn't. Greg says, Grant, very nice shirt. Where can I get one? Oh, they'll be out in June. Don't worry. I promise. They're coming out. Chase says, Chase says Hufanga as an in-the-box safety is probably the best option. He's good at that. Maybe more brought in on third downs, other passing downs. See, that's what I sort of thought. By the end of last year, I thought he was like, it was him and Warner at linebacker on passing downs. And you could use Hufanga as a nickel, a dime linebacker. I thought that's what they wanted to do, but now I guess I see him as a starter.
Well, I mean, you have a huge speed advantage if you can use him at linebacker, and he's pretty physical. So, he's a unique player. But you'd think you'd suffer a little bit in the run game if you played him too many downs at backer.
Right. That's why you do it in a dime package on third down. That's how they did it. I thought that's how they used him at the end of the season last year because Tart was still the starting safety. But Hufanga did play a lot.